Oh, hello there, MacLaren. I'm sometime online teaching professional Mr. Schmittgen. Today I'm going to talk to you about your favorite food and mine, waffles. The sweet, syrupy, delicious, crunchy, crispy way to start the day. The history of waffles begins with the ancient Greeks. Kind of. It depends on what you mean by waffle. Essentially, the ancient Greeks found a faster way to cook their bread. Rather than cooking it on a single hot surface, they put a second hot plate over on top of it, thus creating a thin, crisp wafer, which was known as an obelios. As time went on and Christianity spread throughout Europe, this particular method of cooking bread became incredibly popular in Western Christianity, where the sacrament of communion was performed with a flat piece of unleavened bread. The irons produced an even cooking throughout the bread, giving it the exact look that was necessary for this most important of Christian rituals. As the Middle Ages progressed, it became more and more popular to have designs etched into the irons that this bread was cooking on. Everything from lambs to crosses and other biblical images and scenes which were important to Christianity. As time went on, the church began allowing wealthy individuals to start making their own irons with their own designs on them, secular symbols which weren't important to the church. The various lords and ladies, now with their very own waffle irons, started experimenting with what they put in the dough. Everything from eggs to milk, honey, spices, as well as adding things like yeast in order to give the bread a nice, light, fluffy texture. However, light, fluffy cakes are only light and fluffy if they have enough room to rise. However, these current irons that were in use only had the thickness of about a cracker. From the 11th to the 15th century, these waffle irons began coming gradually deeper and deeper. So that bakers could cook more waffle in less time, they also started having this typical crosshatch pattern. In fact, that's where the word waffle comes from, an old Frankish word waffle, meaning honeycomb. It was around this time that waffles started having sugar and spices added to them. However, because of the high cost of those ingredients, waffles remained something that only the incredibly wealthy could afford. It wouldn't be until the 18th century that sugar and spices from the Caribbean became popular enough in Europe that everyday people were able to afford waffles. Though these waffles were incredibly popular all throughout Europe, it was really in the Netherlands, Belgium, and France that waffles really took off. In fact, it was in France that the very first waffle legislation came into effect. After several fights broke out among waffle makers, King Charles IX proclaimed that there was to be no less than 12 feet, 4 yards of distance between one waffle maker and another. That's approximately the same distance that should be between you and students that aren't in your class. In the 19th century, there was a wave of immigration to the United States from Europe. This included Dutch immigrants from the Netherlands. Now, whenever you move to a new place, you don't want to be without the essentials, and let's face it, waffles are pretty darn essential. And so these immigrants brought their waffle irons with them. This brought about a renewed interest in waffles in the New World. So much so that several decades later, GE produced the very first electric waffle iron. That was in 1918. It wasn't until 1925 that the majority of Americans had access to electricity. I have to assume that the access to quick, nice, delicious waffles is part of that. By the 1930s, there were several viable waffle mixes on the market, but it wasn't until the Dorsa brothers, Frank, Anthony, and Samuel, started a food company in their parents' basement that waffles really became revolutionized in America. Their first really successful item was their mayonnaise that they made. They bragged that it was made with 100% farm fresh eggs. And so, accordingly, they named it Eggo. By the time they invented their frozen waffles, the name had stuck and is still with us today. Today, there are dozens of waffles throughout the world. Brussels waffles, Flemish waffles, Belgian waffles, which actually aren't from Belgium. The name came because there was a company in America back in the 1950s called Belgium waffles, and so they're really an American waffle. We call them Belgian waffles. Essentially, they're just the thickness of Belgian-style waffles. Hong Kong waffles, pandan waffles from Vietnam, Stroop waffles, waffle cones, Liege waffles, which are my personal favorite, and is what I'm eating today. So I hope that you get a chance to have a waffle soon, and have a good day, MacLaren. It's really good. You should try that. It's really good.